Those who survive alongside both beast and nature are known as brutes. Hostile and bloodthirsty, they use their overwhelming strength to carve their way through their opponents. A proper researcher would define a brute, a noun, to describe in relation to beasts and one who lacks intelligence, sensitivity, or compassion. Those who say that probably had their face caved in. Today we're going to talk about my favorite class in Flesh and Blood, the Brute. Their strengths, weaknesses, and future card design that I hope to see. So let's talk brutes. No, not you. Him. With abs that can slice deli meat, Rhinar is our best brute to date. One of the original four, he's beefy, intimidating. Speaking of which, that's his effect. Along with some other cards with the keyword, when we discard a card with 6 attack or higher, his Intimidate triggers. Our opponents banish a random card from their hand face down until the end of turn. Thematically speaking, it makes sense. We're a hulking beast that probably smells of blood and forgotten gym clothes, so who wouldn't drop some of their lunch money in fear? Gameplay-wise, this makes blocking less desirable for our opponents, and in some cases they'll have no hand to block with. Intimidate's a wonderful mechanic with plenty of cards to support it, and with multiple discard outlets for Reiner to go off with. While wonderful, these costs are steep. With perfect hands, we can attack more than once with cards hitting for 7+ damage a turn, or more. We don't always get them. We brute players have to rely on instinct and the hand we're dealt with. Many of our cards costing 2 or more to play, with the additional cost to discard a card at random to play. Doing the math, you could see that 1 attack is a 1 for 3. 1 attack costing 3 cards. Yes, in most circumstances we get 1 or 2 Intimidate triggers, which in the early game allows us to get a solid amount of damage, but let us compare it to the Guardian class, who has Seismic Surge tokens that reduce cost. From Everfest, Guardians received Valda Bright Axe and Earthlore Bounty, a hero and equipment that creates Surge tokens when you or your opponent draws cards during their respective action phases. With creating multiple Surge tokens to reduce their cost, and with on-hit effects that cause your opponent to actually discard a card, destroy items, prevent card draw, and more, Brute just feels like it's a bit lacking depth. Now that isn't to say that we don't have additional payoffs from when we discard. Cards like Massacre allow us to trigger Intimidate twice. Beast Within, which allows us to draw possibly multiple cards when discarded, is great. We also have some enablers in Sand Sketch Plan and Blood Rush Bellow, which either allow us to expand our turn or draw more cards. We just need something more, something that either when discarded or when a card with 6 or more power is discarded, heals us for X, where X is either half the card's stats or by dice roll. Speaking of dice rolls, that is something I wish we saw more of, whether it be in a new equipment or action cards, where we Intimidate X, where X is half of the dice roll round down, or maybe a draw X, lose X life, again equal to half of the rolled number, and we could have a cost 3. Recently, with the release of Classic Battles Rhino vs. Dorinthia, I expected a lot, and perhaps too much for this product. While Dory got a brand new young hero, new specialization, and more, we got the same Rhinar, a worse club, a handful of new cards. Notably, I like to discuss Pack Hole, Clearing Bellow, and Chief Rakontan, because Bone Visor does not replace Skullhorn. The mechanic of Mentor returns with the Chief, and the ability to trigger Intimidate on the attack of a card with 6 or more is nice. But let us compare it to Lady Bathomont, who gives Dominate to 2 attacks, searches for any brute specialization, and if we're comparing, the points go to Lady. The issue with both, they don't pitch for anything, and if they're discarded, which is likely to happen, there's no benefit. Clearing Bellow, a blue pitch that costs 0 to play and just causes Intimidate and go again. It's nice, if this was back in Welcome to Wraith. And guess what? Barraging Beatdown, which comes from Welcome to Wraith, comes in 3 pitches, costs 0, has Intimidate, go again, and then gives your next brute attack this turn. While this card is attacking and is defended by less than 2 non-equipment cards, it gains +2, 3, or 4 respectively. What is this replacing? Then there's Pack Hole, a 3-cost, 2-pitch with 6 attack and 3 defense, and when you defend with it, you reveal the top card. If it's 6 or more power, it stays on top, and if not, it goes to the bottom. It allows for setting up the following turn, and it's a great yellow pitch, something that Brute lacks. I'd love to see more designs like this in the future. It's out of the norm for us to care about blocking, and perhaps there's more room for revealing cards from the top of the deck. But as a Brute player, and someone that buys product, I am disappointed with the new deck. Lastly, I'd like to talk about my hopes for the evolution of this class. And as we mentioned before, Brutes and Beasts are lumped together. We have cards named Beast within, and numerous card art with Brutes either riding them, fighting them, and more. LSS has so much to work with here, and instead of making a new class like Beastmaster or something else, just expand more of it to Brute. We do have Doomsday, which means it can be done, and as it stands, Illusionist and Runeblade can do more summons. So perhaps we could see something akin to Beast transformations, using auras as mechanics to change weapons or armor, give us additional effects to attacks. Rather than the typical plus X or Intimidate, we could look at Udyr from League of Legends for some inspiration. With a look to Uprising introducing Draconic and more than likely Phoenix, perhaps this can change damage to Arcane, increase defense, hand size at the cost of life. The possibilities are endless. Now I've mentioned the bad and the hopes of what I'd like to see with my favorite class, and it might look like I'm bashing it, but we aren't really getting much in terms of representation and wins. It's something I'd like to change. I want Brute to get so good it becomes a living legend. No, not you. Recently with Blood Rush Gaming ProQuest, the Tall Timmy represented Brute strongly, so that there is hope one day we will become legends. So last thing. There are some things that Brute has that's amazing. We are an early game nightmare for many decks. We are the Illusionist's nightmare for days. We're budget friendly for most builds, so new players can get in. And if you like the Hulk, Rhinar is your guy. Now before I leave, if you're looking to get into Flesh and Blood, I do strongly recommend starting with Brute. We have our problems, our shortcomings, and you may think it's basic, but it's easy to learn with depth. If you're familiar with Mono Green Stomping and Magic the Gathering, this will feel familiar to you. The good is you'll be able to learn quickly with this class, and our cards look awesome. Do you agree with what I've said? What are your hopes to see included with the Brute banner? Do you think that there's another class that needs more attention? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to smash that subscribe button first and think later. As always, I'm Wolf the Bard, and thank you for watching. I feel like I forgot something.